little trip down memory lane. The video I did yesterday had me thinking about a few things as I was remembering things from my days as a student. And then I had a conversation with a friend and I told him a little story and I thought, oh, that will make for a good video. It's probably going to be the video that gets me demonetized, but we'll see. It's about sex with old people, basically. Here is the story. I was probably a third-year student. Around about that age, hadn't yet qualified. One of the people I knew was in a Rosicrucian order, and I think she was a leading light within that particular group. And she owned a nursing home, offered me a part-time job. I would basically to pay my bar bill. Part-time job working in the nursing home. I did occasional night shifts, really. I was largely filling in when people were off sick. Superb nursing home, which is a rarity, or at least it was a rarity back then. I'm out of the loop, so I don't know if it's still a rarity. Abuse amongst the elderly in elderly care homes is horrific, and it is absolutely endemic. It was something that back then I tried to raise awareness about, campaign about, but all that happened was I found myself labelled a troublemaker, and as a whistleblower I was not very popular, shall we say. But I would do some videos on elder abuse and the kind of stuff that I used to see happening on a daily basis. I'll do some separate videos on that later on. Now, this particular nursing home was not one of those. This was absolutely superb environment. The staff there were well selected. They were very good, very caring, very professional in their work. Now, the people that lived in this residential unit were on mixed ability. Some people were actually quite independent. They just needed a safe environment in which they've got some carers on tap if needed, all the way through to people who are hugely incapacitated with dementia. Mostly somewhere in between those two ends of the spectrum. Now, a number of things were happening politically at the time. Elderly care was becoming an issue within the UK because it's colossally expensive, and at the time there weren't that many nursing homes around compared to today because the state or the government was expected to provide the care. And it was horribly expensive, and the government at the time didn't really like that idea. So it was encouraging an increase in development of the private sector of care homes. Now, one of the problems was a lot of the pre-existing care homes didn't actually have full occupancy. There was a bit of a problem. And so they weren't making the money to stay solvent. And so essentially more nursing homes that close down, then the more the state has to pick up the tab and so on. So it's a complicated thing. So one of the things they did in order to reduce prison overcrowding, when people come out of prison on license, they have to go to what's called a bail hostel. So they have to report in somewhere that is a registered address. And they wanted to release more prisoners, basically, to ease overcrowding in the British prisons. And they came up with this brilliant idea. We could put bail prisoners or bail hostel prisoners into nursing homes because they've got the beds, they've got a secure environment, and we've got people we want to place. What could go wrong? And that's literally what happened. So nursing homes for a period of time were taking prisoners who were probably mostly lifers who were out on license as part of their bail conditions. Fantastic. Now, in this particular nursing home, we had a prisoner who had been discharged from prison, and he was now living in the accommodation. And he served, I think, a 10, 11-year stretch for murder. And now he's in a nursing home where he's actually the youngest person by quite a few years. I guess he was probably late 40s, early 50s, and the average age of the resident was probably late 70s into their 80s. The atmosphere of the place changed dramatically, but not possibly in the way you might expect, because basically this guy was going into a different room every night and essentially working his way around sexual conquests of the elderly residents in this nursing home. Consensual, although we did worry about some of the ones who were a little bit confused. Here's the problem. The atmosphere improved immeasurably. You had a lot of very happy people, and the women were quite happily sharing him around. And he was loving it. And they seem to love it too. Now, this opens up a whole bunch of ethical problems. Because how do you regulate and control what grown adults do, albeit in different states of conscious awareness and conscious ability? And do you now say, now you can't do that? and we will stop you. When actually what we're seeing is no evidence of harm, but actually a lot of people seem to be quite happy with the arrangement. It was very disturbing to me at the time. I would have been about 20, 21 years old, and I really did not know what to make of this, or what should, if anything, be done. If you have any thoughts on this one, do stick it in the comment section. And if you are somebody who's worked in a care home environment back then, that would have been around about 91, 92, and you experienced this yourself, do share your story in the comment section, because I'll be interested if this went on elsewhere. I'm sure it probably did. But that wasn't the strangest thing. The strangest thing was one of our residents. She was not sectionable in that she's made a ward of court. A section of the Mental Health Act has legal power assigned to somebody else to actually take control of her behavior, where she lives and what she does. She was not in that category, but she had early stages dementia. Her speech was poor, didn't really communicate very well verbally, and seemed to be relatively independent, but needed to be in a care environment. Now, she would go off in the daytime around about town, often begging for cigarettes, and then come back again. Now, she didn't need to beg for cigarettes. She could have as many cigarettes as she wanted. Back then, in the civilized society, we let people smoke back then. Now, here was the problem. At night, now this was a navy town. You can see where this is going. At night, she would go off into town and bring young sailors back. Now, this lady was elderly, tiny, elderly, and very, very proactive with her proclivity, shall we say. And it wasn't unusual at all to find a young sailor on shore leave in the kitchen of this nursing home in the morning cooking breakfast. Just one of those things. Now, again, this raised all sorts of issues. The staff, or certainly the boss, had tried to have some kind of ward of court order made, but she wasn't sectionable, did not fit any criteria, and there was nothing in terms of legal or moral obligations upon the staff to actually do anything about this. There was nothing they could do. And so the question is now raised is, what do you do in a situation like that? Do you leave it? Do you just leave it alone? Do you kick her out of the nursing home, send her somewhere else? I mean, that's a problem in itself. What do you do with that person? Again, I'm kind of interested in what other people make of that scenario. What would you do? What do you think should be done? What is the law on that? And if you have any similar stories, I would be interested to hear them. As I've been thinking about this one, all sorts of other stories have come up. Tales from the nursing home. I'll make some future videos on that. Maybe not straight away, but I'll do some later on. As always, do please click the like button, leave any comments you got, and see you in the next video.